opening the center's diagonal immediately. This popular gambit aims to seize early initiative and spark an attacking game. Unlocking a sharp Sicilian battle, black immediately contests the center's central square. A flexible pawn thrust that avoids immediate confrontation, aiming to build a solid central structure. Preparing a kingside fianchetto, intending to control the long diagonal and create a robust defensive structure. Building a solid pawn chain to control central squares and prepare for fianchetto development. The bishop now aims its gaze along the long diagonal, potentially disrupting white's kingside pawn structure later. Developing the bishop to this diagonal prepares to support a kingside pawn advance or control key central squares. Developing the knight here prepares to contest the d4 square and potentially supports an eventual pawn push on the queenside. Aggressively seizing central space, this move signals a bold ambition to launch a kingside attack, potentially leaving white's king a bit exposed. Solidifying the center and opening a diagonal for the queen are this move's key contributions. Developing the knight here opens up attacking possibilities and supports a central pawn push. Embracing the center, black challenges white's pawn phalanx, injecting immediate dynamism into the position. Casting locks down the king, securing the pawn chain and preparing for future central advances. Developing the knight to the edge of the pawn chain often signals a desire to reroute it to a more active square or support a central pawn advance. Solidifying the center and preparing for a pawn push to d4 aims to gain space. Securing the king in the center offers immediate safety while eyeing potential pawn advances. Opening the queenside flank, this knight embarks on a leisurely detour, seeking more advantageous squares than its current passive posting. Exchanging the pawn opens a crucial diagonal for your bishop and initiates dynamic central play. Opening the g-file now demands vigilant king defense and opens a new avenue for attack. Challenging white's pawn front directly, black sacrifices a pawn to ignite central counterplay and open lines. Unveiling the king's diagonals with queen pressure, black must address this immediate threat to the monarch's safety or risk significant positional disadvantage. Challenging the center immediately, d5 aims to disrupt white's pawn structure and open lines for black's pieces. Pushing forward with the e-pawn significantly curbs black's queenside ambitions and creates space for white's pieces to maneuver. Black aims to solidify the queenside and potentially challenge white's central pawn push. Establishing central control, this thrust aims to break open the e-file and pressure black's queenside pawn structure, creating dynamic possibilities. Targeting the queen, this bishop repositions to disrupt white's queenside pawn structure and eye the open c-file. Repositioning the rook to the open file hints at preparing for central pawn breaks and potential piece exchanges. Liberating the c-file, but opening a diagonal for white's queen and potentially weakening black's pawn structure. Reclaiming the central pawn opens a diagonal for your queen and aims to pressure black's somewhat exposed king. This knight's sortie to the edge of the board ignites a sharp positional battle for control of the center and queenside. Shifting the queen activates it, eyeing the b6 pawn while potentially preparing to contest the central files. Centering the queen offers better protection to the queenside pawn structure and prepares to contest the e-file. Solidifying the queenside pawn structure, this move aims to support the advanced e5 pawn and prepare for potential queenside expansion. Challenging the central tension and preparing to activate the rook on the open file. Building a powerful pawn center and eye on the queenside, preparing for a central pawn break or a queenside assault. Reclaiming central influence is paramount. The knight's journey aims to re-engage the fight for the d5 square. Repositioning the knight to c2 aims to support the center and potentially launch a kingside attack, subtly redeploying forces for future action. Rethinking black's pawn structure and central influence, this knight repositions to support a potential kingside advance. This move forcibly wedges a pawn into black's camp, creating immediate tension and restricting piece mobility, while opening lines for your own pieces. Refocusing on the queen side, black aims to improve the light-squared bishop's scope and potentially free the nc6. Securing the open file solidifies your central control and readies pieces for future action. Fortifying the queenside dark squares, the bishop prepares to challenge control of the important c8 rank. Opening the long diagonal to pressure black's queenside, while potentially setting up for a later central pawn push. Reinforcing the center and preparing for the eventual fight over the open c-file is the immediate goal here. Shifting the queen to d2 signals a repositioning, aiming to reinforce the d-pawn and potentially prepare a kingside advance. Prophylaxis against future knight incursions and potential queen harassment, securing the kingside against further infiltration. This repositioning knight aims to exert pressure on the queen's side, potentially targeting squares like c4 or d5, while freeing up the central e-file for further action. A bold sacrifice, disrupting white's kingside pawn structure and opening vital avenues for counterplay against the vulnerable monarch. Unleashing the rook to a powerful outpost, it pressures the knight and threatens to dismantle black's queenside defenses. Reclaiming central space and challenging the isolated queen's pawn with a knight redeployment. Unleashing a powerful knight to dominate central squares and threaten the unprotected black king. Disrupting the pawn chain, black bravely snatches the knight, aiming to untangle their pieces from this cramped position. Capitalizing on black's misplaced knights, this capture opens a decisive diagonal, threatening immediate material gain and crippling black's coordination. Challenging white's pawn structure, this maneuver seeks to activate the queen and seize queenside space. Consolidating forces on the central files after exchanges, white aims to neutralize black's active bishop. Shifting the rook to the d-file aims to activate it and contest open lines, potentially creating attacking chances against white's center. Seizing the open file, white aims to disrupt black's defense and exploit the exposed monarch. Reclaiming the knight opens a crucial diagonal for black's queen, threatening white's beleaguered king. Unleashing a bishop sacrifice that rips open the center, forcing a critical decision for black's king. Sacrificing the knight opens a critical diagonal for the bishop and creates tactical chaos. Strikes at the heart of black's disconnected pieces, aiming to dismantle their queenside pawn structure and disrupt coordination. Securing the queen on the 8th rank is a valiant attempt to consolidate, but it leaves the king terribly exposed to the onslaught. Unleashing a fierce knight sacrifice to pry open the king's defenses. Recapturing the knight on d6 opens up a dynamic endgame with central pawn exchanges and potential for piece activity on the queenside. A devastating knight fork, shattering black's defenses and forcing a desperate king escape. Relocating the monarch to safety is paramount when powerful attacking pieces are lining up against it. Focusing the queen to attack the weak f7 square offers a promising avenue for white's initiative. Seeking to reroute the rook to a more active square, evading immediate capture and reinforcing the pawn chain. A knight repositions to a central outpost, aiming to stifle black's queenside expansion and pressure weak squares. Unleashing a desperate counterattack, black gambits the queen to stir up complications and potentially expose the enemy king's safety. Repositioning the queen to support the passed pawn and control the critical diagonal offers winning chances. Black sacrifices a bishop for tempo, aiming to expose white's king and disrupt its defensive setup. Protecting the king's escape square, the monarch prepares to flee the storm brewing on the dark squares. Exchanging queens here simplifies the position, leaving black's king exposed to further attacks. The king is now exposed, leaving white's monarch extremely vulnerable to attack on the open file. Hoping to activate a dormant bishop, but the immediate outcome is a precarious piece sacrifice. This rook advance opens a crucial line, aiming to disrupt black's scattered pieces and exploit the exposed king. Attempting to regroup the rook to a more active square, though the kingside pawn structure remains compromised. Unleashing a knight to h6, This aggressively aims to disrupt black's queen's influence and open up mating threats.